My husband changed his phone wallpaper, from our wedding photo to a bikini pic of his assistant. I found out when he handed me his phone by accident. I smiled, airdropped a video to the room TV. Him and her, in my condo, recorded by security cams. His parents were watching. His mom gasped. His dad stood up, then slapped him. The champagne was chilling in the refrigerator, Sinatra played softly in the background, and the scent of rosemary roast chicken, Lincoln's favorite, wafted through our modest suburban condo. Our 5th anniversary dinner needed to be perfect. 5 years of marriage, 3 apartments, 2 promotions, 1 dream home, and countless promises. I smoothed down my navy dress, the one he said brought out the gold flecks in my eyes, and reached for my phone to check the time. Bella, have you seen my phone? I think I left it on the counter. Lincoln called from upstairs, his voice carrying that slight edge of impatience I'd become so familiar with lately. I'll look. I called back, scanning the kitchen countertops until I spotted his sleek black phone beside the salt and pepper shakers. As I picked it up, the screen lit up with notifications and my breath caught in my throat. Where our wedding photo had been, that perfect sunset shot of us laughing on the beach, was now Caroline, Lincoln's assistant, in a tiny red bikini, posing on what looked like a hotel balcony. Her long blonde hair blowing in the breeze, her smile aimed directly at the photographer. My husband. Before we continue with Bella's journey, I want to thank you for joining this raw exploration of betrayal and reclamation. If you connect with stories about women who refuse to be victims, who use their intelligence and strength to take back their power, consider subscribing. It's completely free and you'll never miss another story of transformation from devastation to self-discovery. Now let's see how Bella's perfect life began to unravel. My fingers turned to ice around the phone. The room suddenly felt too bright, the music too loud. I stared at the image, blinking slowly as if that might change what I was seeing. Caroline had been working for Lincoln for just under a year. Young, ambitious, with a marketing degree and what my husband had described as fresh ideas for the advertising agency where he was creative director. Did you find it? Lincoln called again and I heard his footsteps on the stairs. With practiced composure, the same I used in courtroom proceedings when opposing counsel threw unexpected evidence my way, I placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it, screen down. It's on the counter, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded while my internal world collapsed into rubble. Lincoln entered the kitchen, all 6 feet of him in pressed slacks and the blue button-down I'd given him last Christmas. He smiled, that crooked smile that had once made my heart race for entirely different reasons than it was racing now. Thanks, babe. He grabbed the phone casually, pocketing it without checking the screen. The chicken smells amazing. I watched him pour himself a glass of water, studied the familiar movements of his hands, the wedding band still firmly in place. In that moment, a strange clarity washed over me. 10 years as a corporate attorney had taught me one crucial lesson. Never show your hand too early. Your parents are still coming at 7, right? I asked, reaching for wine glasses as if this were just another Thursday evening. Yep. Dad texted earlier that they're looking forward to it. I nodded, calculating rapidly behind my practiced smile. Easton and Hazel Thomas. My in-laws of 5 years. Easton, the respected circuit court judge. Hazel, the retired elementary school principal. Both adored their only son, their golden boy who could do no wrong. Over the next hour, as Lincoln showered and I put finishing touches on dinner, my mind worked with cold precision. The image on his phone wasn't just a betrayal, it was evidence. And if there was one piece of evidence, there would be more. That night, during dinner with his parents, I observed Lincoln like he was a hostile witness. The way he checked his phone under the table. How he mentioned Caroline's name twice in professional contexts that seemed unnecessarily detailed. The slight flush on his neck when Hazel asked about his upcoming business trip to Chicago. 3 days later, under the pretense of increasing neighborhood break-ins, I had a security company install cameras in our condo. Lincoln barely noticed, distracted by an urgent project that kept him at the office until 9 most evenings. It's this new campaign for Mitchell Breweries, he explained, loosening his tie one night when he finally came home. Caroline and I are having to rebuild the entire concept from scratch. I nodded sympathetically, playing the role of supportive wife while my phone silently recorded every camera feed from our home to a private cloud account. The following Tuesday, Lincoln texted that he'd be working late again. I ordered takeout, poured a glass of Cabernet, and settled onto our sofa with my laptop. 4 hours I sifted through mundane footage of empty rooms and hallways. Until 2:17 p.m. The front door opened. Lincoln entered first, laughing, followed by Caroline, wearing the same red dress she'd had on in the office party photos on the company website. They were supposed to be at a client meeting across town. I watched, paralyzed, as my husband led his assistant through our home. The home I'd decorated, the home I paid 60% of the mortgage on with my attorney's salary. When they reached our bedroom door, I slammed the laptop shut. My wine glass tipped, spilling dark red across our cream-colored rug like blood from a wound. I didn't move to clean it. In the following weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I attended partners' meetings at my firm, drafted contracts, met with clients, all while gathering evidence with detached precision. Security footage timestamps matched against Lincoln's late meeting texts. Credit card statements showing dinners for two at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges on days he was supposedly at conferences. I cataloged it all in a password-protected folder labeled Anniversary Video. A darkly fitting title for what I was compiling. The evidence mounted day by day while outwardly, I remained the same Bella Thomas. Competent attorney, devoted wife planning a special 5th anniversary celebration with her in-laws. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal, though that burned like acid through my chest at unexpected moments. The hardest part was maintaining the facade, asking about his day when I'd already watched footage of where he'd actually been. Lying beside him at night, wondering if he was dreaming of her. Washing sheets that carried evidence of betrayals I'd witnessed through cold, digital eyes. One night as I reviewed new footage showing them in our kitchen, her sitting on the granite counter I'd insisted on during our renovation, him standing between her legs. Something inside me hardened into resolve. The anniversary dinner with his parents wasn't just an opportunity for exposure. It was necessary justice. I would not crumble. I would not scream or throw things or fall apart like characters in the movies. I would use every skill I'd honed in 10 years of legal practice to present my case flawlessly, with Lincoln, Caroline, Easton, and Hazel as my captive jury. And when the verdict came down, I would walk away with my dignity intact, leaving behind nothing but the shattered illusion of the perfect life we'd pretended to build. The morning after my decision, I woke up beside Lincoln feeling like I was wearing someone else's skin. His arm draped casually across my waist as if he had every right to be there. I slipped from beneath his touch, careful not to disturb his sleep, and headed to the shower where I could let silent tears mix with the water streaming down my face. 10 minutes to fall apart, then the mask would go back on. Big case today? Lincoln asked over coffee, noticing my extra professional charcoal skirt suit. I smiled, stirring cream into my mug. Deposition for the Westlake merger. Might run late. The lie slid easily from my lips, though I'd never been dishonest with him before his betrayal began. No problem. I've got that client dinner with the Mitchell Brewery's people anyway. I nodded, mentally cataloging the information. There was no client dinner on his shared calendar, which I'd checked obsessively that morning. Another thread to pull. At work, I closed my office door and pulled out a leather-bound journal I'd purchased specifically for this purpose. Red, ironically, the color of both passion and warning. Inside, I began documenting everything. Dates, inconsistencies, patterns in Lincoln's behavior. The legal pad format I'd used throughout law school now served to build a case against my own marriage. Tuesday, said client dinner with Mitchell Breweries. Called office, no dinner scheduled. Credit card charge at Riverpoint Hotel Bar, $78. Wednesday, working late, but location tracking shows car at Caroline's apartment complex from 7:40 p.m. to 11:15 p.m. Thursday, anniversary gift receipt in pocket diamond earrings, $1,200. Not for me. Week after week, the journal filled with clinical observations, each one a paper cut to my heart. The woman who documented these betrayals and the woman who smiled at Lincoln over breakfast became increasingly separate entities. One was gathering ammunition. The other was maintaining necessary cover. You seem distracted lately, my colleague Megan noted over lunch one day. Everything okay at home? Just anniversary planning, I replied, the practiced smile appearing instantly. 5 years is a milestone, right? The double life wore on me. Each morning I applied makeup carefully, concealing the shadows under my eyes from nights spent reviewing security footage. I laughed at Lincoln's jokes during dinner parties with our friends, all while mentally calculating how to access our financial records without arousing suspicion. My opportunity came when Lincoln mentioned a 3-day conference in Boston. One I promptly verified was actually happening, though whether he'd be attending remained questionable. The morning of his departure, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. With trembling hands, I logged into our joint banking portal. We maintained separate accounts for our salaries but shared one for household expenses and occasional joint purchases. I scrolled through 6 months of statements, taking screenshots of every suspicious transaction. Woodland Jewelry, $1,247.98. Weekend reservation at Lakeside Inn, $689.73. Carolina Wine Imports, $312.50. Caroline's favorite vineyard, according to her social media. Each discovery was meticulously added to my growing file. I wasn't just collecting evidence of an affair anymore. I was documenting financial infidelity as well. Lincoln was spending our shared resources to finance his betrayal. That same day, I took the calculated risk of adding 2 more hidden cameras. One in our bedroom closet where he often took private work calls, and another angled toward our bathroom door. The existing cameras had captured them in common areas, but I needed comprehensive evidence. Every legal instinct warned about invasion of privacy, but my wounded heart overruled professional caution. How was Boston? I asked when Lincoln returned, his overnight bag dropping in our entryway. Exhausting. Back-to-back sessions on digital marketing trends. He kissed my cheek and I fought the urge to wipe away the touch. How about I take you to dinner tonight? Make up for being gone. I smiled, nodding. That sounds perfect. While he showered, I checked the location history on his phone, which I'd figured out how to access weeks earlier. The blue dots showed his movements clustered around downtown Chicago hotels, nowhere near Logan Airport or Boston. Another entry for my journal. The dual existence became almost normal, watching him lie to my face, accepting it with a smile, then documenting everything once he left the room. I became an expert actress, laughing at appropriate moments, initiating intimacy occasionally to avoid suspicion, all while silently building my case. One night, Lincoln reached for me in bed, his hand sliding along my hip. I didn't recoil, though everything in me wanted to. Instead, I played my role, responding to his touch while my mind catalogued the mechanics of our interaction. The performance was convincing enough that afterward, he fell asleep with his arm around me, completely unaware of my detachment. As our anniversary approached, I began planning the revelation with the same attention to detail I devoted to preparing crucial witness testimony. The dinner would include his parents, Easton and Hazel, who had always treated me like a daughter. Their presence was crucial. Lincoln valued their opinion above anyone else's. The timing needed to be precise. After dinner but before dessert, when everyone would be relaxed but still alert. I practiced controlling my breathing, rehearsed potential responses to his inevitable denials, and prepared myself for the shock on his parents' faces. The security footage was edited into a 3-minute compilation, short enough to maintain impact, long enough to be undeniable. Nothing explicit but damning nonetheless. Mom and Dad are looking forward to Saturday, Lincoln mentioned casually, 3 days before our anniversary. Dad's bringing that 20-year scotch he's been saving. That's thoughtful of him, I replied, picturing Easton's face when he would see what his son had been doing. Would he still want to toast our marriage then? The night before the dinner, I stood in our kitchen rehearsing my composed facade one final time. Tomorrow the performance would end. The evidence was irrefutable, the plan meticulously crafted. 5 years of marriage would conclude in a single evening of revelation. As I chopped vegetables for tomorrow's dinner, Lincoln came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy almost anniversary," he murmured against my neck. I leaned back against him, playing my part one last time. "It's been quite a journey," I replied, my voice steady despite the thunder of truth waiting to break loose. Indeed it had been. A journey from love to betrayal to calculated revenge. And tomorrow at precisely 8:15 p.m., the mask would finally come off. The morning of our anniversary arrived with golden autumn sunlight streaming through our kitchen windows. I'd been awake since 4:30 a.m., unable to sleep with the knowledge of what the evening would bring. The irony wasn't lost on me. preparing a celebration for the end of a marriage. I moved through the kitchen with methodical precision, chopping herbs for the roast, preparing the marinade for Lincoln's favorite garlic butter potatoes, and setting the table with our wedding china. Each motion felt like a scene in a play, the devoted wife preparing a special meal, though the script was about to take a dramatic turn no one but me anticipated. Lincoln came downstairs around noon, freshly showered and smiling. "Need any help?" he asked, dropping a kiss on my cheek. "I've got it covered," I replied, my voice steady. "Could you pick up the wine?" Easton mentioned wanting that Cabernet from Willowbrook Vineyards. "Sure thing," he said, grabbing his keys. "Can't wait for tonight. 5 years with the most beautiful attorney in Chicago deserves a proper celebration." As the door closed behind him, I allowed myself a moment of weakness, gripping the counter until my knuckles whitened. 5 years. 300 pieces of evidence. One devastating video waiting on my phone. By 6:30 the condo smelled of rosemary and garlic. I'd changed into a simple black dress, appropriate for both a celebration and a funeral. The dining room sparkled with candlelight, our wedding portrait watching over the scene like a cruel joke. The doorbell rang at 6:55 p.m. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the hallway mirror, and opened the door to Easton and Hazel Thomas. "There she is," Easton boomed, pulling me into a bear hug. At 68, the retired judge still maintained the commanding presence that had once made attorneys tremble in his courtroom. "Happy anniversary, sweetheart." Hazel embraced me next, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of lilac. "We brought gifts," she whispered conspiratorially, holding up elegant silver gift bags. "And scotch," Easton added, producing an expensive bottle. "Where's that son of mine?" On cue, Lincoln appeared from the kitchen, embracing his parents with genuine affection. Something twisted painfully in my chest watching him. The charming son, the doting husband, knowing what lay beneath the facade. Dinner progressed with practiced normalcy. I served the courses, poured the wine, and participated in conversations about neighborhood developments and Lincoln's recent work projects. "The Mitchell campaign is really taking off," Lincoln explained, swirling his wine. "We've got some innovative strategies in play." "All thanks to that assistant of yours," Hazel said innocently. "Caroline, right? You mentioned she's been instrumental." I watched Lincoln's face carefully. The slight tightening around his eyes, the momentary pause before responding. "The whole team's been great," he deflected. "Speaking of great teams," Easton raised his glass. "Here's to 5 spectacular years for these two. Lincoln, you couldn't have chosen a better partner." "I know," Lincoln agreed, reaching for my hand across the table. I allowed his fingers to intertwine with mine, feeling nothing but cold determination. After clearing the dinner plates, I excused myself to the kitchen, ostensibly to prepare dessert. Instead, I took 30 seconds to steady my breathing and retrieve my phone from its charging station. The video was queued up, ready to airdrop to our television. There would be no turning back. When I returned to the dining room, Hazel was in the middle of a story about Lincoln's childhood accomplishments. "He was always so focused when he wanted something," she was saying. "Remember that science fair in 8th grade, Lincoln? You worked for weeks on that project." Speaking of memories, I interjected smoothly, placing strawberry cheesecake, Lincoln's favorite, on the table. "We still haven't shown you the photos from our trip to Lake Geneva last month." Lincoln smiled, clearly relieved by the change of subject. "They're on my phone somewhere." "Why don't you show your mom?" I suggested. "I think she'd especially love the sunset shots from the boat tour." As he reached for his phone, I casually picked up mine. "Actually, I have some better ones. Let me put them on the TV so we can all see them properly." No one questioned this. We often shared photos this way during family gatherings. I tapped a few buttons, connecting to the smart TV mounted on our dining room wall. My heart hammered against my ribs as I selected the file labeled Anniversary Special. "I put together a little slideshow," I explained, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just some highlights from our 5 years together." The screen flickered to life. The first image was indeed from our wedding. Lincoln and me on the beach, laughing as waves crashed behind us. His parents made appreciative noises. Lincoln smiled, reaching for my hand again. I withdrew my fingers just as the image changed. The timestamp appeared first, 2:17 p.m. Tuesday, September 23rd. Our living room came into focus. The front door opened. Lincoln's smile froze on his face. The footage showed him entering our home, Caroline following close behind. Their laughter was muted but visible. His hand on the small of her back. Her fingers in his hair. "What is this?" Lincoln's voice cracked. He lunged for the remote control, but I'd already moved it out of reach. Easton and Hazel sat motionless, confusion giving way to horrified understanding as the footage continued. Lincoln leading Caroline toward our bedroom. "Bella, turn it off," Lincoln hissed, standing now, his face drained of color. "That's just the beginning," I replied calmly, though my heart raced. "There's more. Kitchen counter footage from last Thursday. Shower footage from Monday morning while I was at court. Oh, and my personal favorite, you two on our anniversary weekend last year when I was visiting my sick mother." Hazel's gasp seemed to echo through the room. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Easton remained perfectly still, his face darkening to a dangerous shade of red. "These are time-stamped, documented, and backed up," I continued in my most professional courtroom voice. "As are the financial records showing gifts purchased for Caroline on our joint account. The hotel receipts. The text messages." Lincoln stared at me, then at his parents, then back at the screen where the evidence of his betrayal played on in damning clarity. "Lincoln Thomas." Easton's voice was barely recognizable, a guttural growl I'd never heard from the typically composed judge. "What have you done?" The storm I'd been preparing for had finally broken. As Lincoln stammered through desperate explanations, I stood watching the destruction with a strange sense of detachment. 5 years of marriage disintegrating before my eyes, yet all I felt was the quiet satisfaction of justice finally being served. Easton Thomas rose from his chair with the deliberate slowness of a man fighting to maintain control. The room seemed to shrink under the weight of his fury. Lincoln backed away, hands raised defensively. "Dad, I can explain," he began but never finished the sentence. The crack of Easton's palm against Lincoln's face echoed through our dining room like a gunshot. 5 years of practicing law in Chicago's most cutthroat courtrooms hadn't prepared me for this raw display of parental disappointment. Lincoln staggered backward, his hand moving to his reddening cheek, shock written across his features. "Don't you dare call me that right now," Easton growled, his voice trembling with rage. "Your mother and I raised you better than this." Hazel remained frozen in her seat, tears streaming silently down her lined face. Her fingers clutched the edge of our dining table, the mahogany one we'd found at that antique store in Michigan during our second anniversary trip. The strawberry cheesecake sat untouched, its perfect surface now an obscene reminder of the facade we'd been living. "It's not what it looks like," Lincoln tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. "Caroline and I, it's just work stress. A mistake. A one-time thing that got out of hand." I let out a small hollow laugh. "One time, Lincoln, I have footage spanning 8 months. 73 separate incidents in our home alone." The precision of my documentation seemed to hit him like physical blows. His eyes darted between his parents and me, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. The footage continued playing silently in the background, a ghostly chronicle of betrayal that no one could look away from. "Turn it off," Hazel whispered finally, her voice cracking. "Please, Bella." I nodded and pressed pause but didn't disconnect the screen. The frozen image of Lincoln kissing Caroline in our kitchen hovered like an accusation. "When?" Easton demanded, still standing over his son. "When did you become this person?" Lincoln sank into his chair, suddenly looking decades older than his 35 years. "It just happened," he mumbled. "We were working late, drinking, celebrating the Mitchell account. 8 months ago," I supplied helpfully. "Around the time I made junior partner. While I was working 16-hour days to advance my career, you were advancing your relationship with Caroline." I moved around the table, retrieving a manila folder from the sideboard drawer. My hands didn't shake as I laid out printed screenshots of text messages, credit card statements, hotel receipts. Each piece of evidence meticulously organized by date. The attorney in me couldn't help but appreciate the thoroughness of my case. "Diamond earrings," I pointed to one receipt. "Charged to our joint account the day after I won the Westfield case. Weekend at the Lakeside Inn while I was visiting my mother in the hospital. Dinner at Giovanni's, where you proposed to me on her birthday." Lincoln didn't touch the papers. His gaze remained fixed on some invisible point beyond my shoulder. unable to meet anyone's eyes. This is why you've been so distant, Hazel said softly, her initial shock giving way to painful understanding. All those family dinners you canceled. The holidays when you were too busy to visit. Caroline needed me, Lincoln said weakly, as if this explained everything. The words hung in the air for 3 excruciating seconds before Easton exploded. Needed you? Needed you. His fist came down on the table, causing the wine glasses to jump. Your wife needed you. Your family needed you. We welcomed you into our home at Christmas while you were carrying on with. He couldn't finish, overcome with disgust. I'd never seen Easton Thomas at a loss for words in all the years I'd known him. The former judge who could deliver hour-long opinions without notes was now stammering with rage. I was going to end it, Lincoln tried again, an edge of whining desperation entering his voice. After the Milwaukee conference next month. I was going to break it off with Caroline and recommit to our marriage. That was news to me, another lie to add to the mountain between us. I studied my husband's face, searching for any trace of the man I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. The college boyfriend who'd written me poetry during finals week. The fiancé who'd surprised me with sunset picnics. The newlywed who'd whispered dreams of growing old together. He was a stranger now, this panicked man crafting flimsy excuses in our imploding dining room. How convenient, I said coolly. And what about the trip to Cancun you booked for Caroline's birthday next month? The one you paid for with airline miles from our joint account. Lincoln paled. How did you? I'm an attorney, Lincoln. Gathering evidence is what I do. Hazel stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I can't be here right now, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I need air. She moved toward the door with unsteady steps. Easton looked torn between following his wife and continuing to confront his son. Parental instinct won out, and he gave Lincoln one last withering look before going after Hazel. Don't you dare leave, he commanded his son. We're not finished. In the sudden quiet after the front door closed behind them, Lincoln and I faced each other across the ruins of our anniversary dinner. 5 years of marriage reduced to forensic evidence and security footage. How long have you known? He asked finally, his voice small. Long enough to be certain, I replied, feeling oddly detached from the pain that should have accompanied this conversation. Long enough to prepare. Lincoln reached for my hand across the table. I withdrew it before he could touch me. Bella, please. We can work through this. Couples therapy. A fresh start. I'll cut all ties with Caroline immediately. I stood, smoothing the fabric of my black dress. Your parents will be back soon. I'm going to pack a bag and stay at Megan's tonight. You're leaving. Panic flooded his features. No. Like this. Did you think I'd stay? I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. Did you think I'd watch that footage and then just... What? Forgive you? Pretend it never happened. I love you, he said desperately. One mistake shouldn't erase 10 years together. 73 mistakes, I corrected him. In our home alone. I moved toward our bedroom, pausing at the threshold to look back at the man who was still legally my husband. Don't follow me. You have enough to deal with when your parents return. Upstairs, I packed efficiently, toiletries, work clothes, important documents. The overnight bag I'd prepared days ago sat ready in my closet. As I zipped it closed, I heard the front door open and Easton's voice rising again in the living room. I slipped out the back door, my car keys clutched tightly in my hand. The cool October air hit my face like a blessing, washing away the suffocating atmosphere of deceit that had filled our home. As I drove away from the condo, from the marriage, from the life I'd thought was real, an unexpected feeling washed over me. Not grief. Not rage. Not even heartbreak. Freedom. Megan's spare bedroom became my sanctuary for the first week after the implosion of my marriage. 7 days of ignored calls from Lincoln, concerned text messages from Hazel, and a single voicemail from Easton that simply said, "We're here when you're ready, Bella." My colleagues' quiet support, coffee waiting by the bathroom door each morning, take-out dinners with no pressure to talk, gave me space to process the seismic shift in my reality. You can stay as long as you need, Megan offered on the 8th morning, leaning against her kitchen counter. But you should probably go back to work before Peterson assigns your cases to someone else. He was right. I'd taken a week of emergency personal leave, but hiding away wouldn't solve anything. The law had always been my anchor, the one thing I could trust when everything else proved uncertain. I'll go back tomorrow, I decided, feeling a flicker of my old resolve returning. Time to face the music. The law firm of Baker, Peterson and Walsh fell silent when I walked through the glass doors Monday morning. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Eyes tracked my progress down the hallway toward my office. News traveled fast in Chicago's legal circles, especially news involving a respected judge's son and a junior partner with a promising future. Ted Walsh, one of the founding partners, appeared in my doorway before I'd even set down my briefcase. "Bella," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Got a minute?" In his corner office with its view of Lake Michigan, Ted didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Lincoln called the firm. Twice. Said you've been unreachable and he's concerned." I met Ted's gaze steadily. "I'm separated from my husband, Ted. Not incapacitated. The Henderson acquisition documents will be on your desk by noon." A hint of approval flickered across his weathered face. "Good. And the Robertson deposition?" "Scheduled for Thursday. I've prepared all the exhibits." Ted nodded once, satisfied. "Divorce is messy, Bella. But it doesn't have to be professional suicide. Keep performing like you always have and this firm will have your back." The conversation was classic Ted Walsh, blunt, practical, and mercifully devoid of prying questions or unwanted sympathy. As I returned to my office, the whispers resumed, but I walked with my head higher than when I'd arrived. 2 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I finally returned to my condo. Lincoln had moved out at Hazel's insistence, temporarily staying at his parents' suburban home like a teenager grounded for missing curfew. I changed the locks anyway. Standing in our bedroom, I surveyed the ghost of our marriage. His dresser drawers half empty. The bathroom counter missing his electric razor. The closet with gaps where his suits once hung. I stripped the bed completely, bundling the sheets for donation. Some things couldn't be washed clean. The divorce proceedings began with clinical efficiency, a benefit of being an attorney with connections throughout Chicago's legal system. I secured Margaret Holloway, a legendary divorce lawyer known for her ruthless effectiveness, especially in cases involving infidelity. "You've done my job for me," Margaret remarked, reviewing my meticulous evidence files during our first meeting. "Most clients bring me suspicions. You've brought me a complete case." Lincoln hired Stanley Roth, a smooth-talking attorney from his firm's network. Their first offer was almost insulting. Lincoln would keep the condo, I would get a cash settlement, and we'd go our separate ways quietly. "He's concerned about your career," Stanley explained with practiced sincerity during mediation. "Publicity around the circumstances might damage your professional reputation." Margaret's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "My client has time-stamped video evidence of your client's infidelity in their marital home. Would he prefer we present that in open court?" The next offer was considerably more reasonable. 3 months into the separation, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Easton. We met at a quiet restaurant away from the legal district, where he sat waiting with a glass of ice water and the same grave expression he'd worn on the bench for 30 years. "Lincoln has been removed from the Mitchell Brewery's account," he said after we ordered, cutting straight to the point as always. "They were one of his biggest clients." I nodded, unsurprised. The industry is small. Word gets around. "It wasn't gossip that cost him the account," Easton replied, meeting my gaze directly. "It was me. I've known James Mitchell for 40 years. Golf buddies. When I told him what happened, what my son did to you, he pulled the account immediately. The revelation should have brought satisfaction, but I felt only a hollow ache." "You didn't have to do that." "I did," Easton countered firmly. "Actions have consequences. Lincoln seems to have forgotten that somewhere along the way." He reached across the table, his large hand covering mine briefly. "You're still family to us, Bella. That doesn't change because my son failed you." The unexpected support from my soon-to-be ex-in-laws became one of the stranger aspects of the divorce. Hazel called weekly not to plead Lincoln's case but to check on my well-being. Easton's connections in the legal world subtly cleared paths that might otherwise have been blocked to me. Their loyalty, even as their son's life unraveled, was a testament to their character. 6 months after the anniversary dinner, the divorce was finalized. I kept the condo, my retirement accounts, and received a settlement that acknowledged Lincoln's betrayal without publicly humiliating him. The day I signed the papers, I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. That evening I stood in my living room, mine alone now, and took stock of the space. Every piece of furniture held memories. The sofa where we'd watched movies, the dining table that had witnessed our final confrontation, the walls that had been silent witnesses to his betrayals. The next day I called a realtor. Moving into a bright, airy apartment overlooking the Chicago River marked the beginning of my truly independent life. I filled it with furniture I chose alone, arranged according to my preferences without compromise. The freedom to make decisions, from the color of bath towels to weekend plans, without considering another person's opinions, was intoxicating. At work, my reputation shifted from Lincoln Thomas's wife to simply Bella, the attorney who handled the Henderson acquisition with exceptional skill, who never missed a filing deadline despite personal turmoil, who maintained professional composure when facing opposing counsel who happened to be her ex-husband's college roommate. 1 year after the divorce, Lincoln's professional decline became common knowledge in our circles. The Mitchell account was just the beginning. Easton's quiet withdrawal of support, from introductions to country club memberships to holiday party invitations, systematically disconnected Lincoln from the network that had buoyed his career for years. Caroline left the agency 6 weeks after our divorce was finalized. According to office gossip, she'd moved to Denver with a pharmaceutical sales representative she'd met at a conference. I ran into Lincoln only once at a charity gala I attended with colleagues. He looked older, subdued. We exchanged polite nods across the room, two strangers who once shared everything. "Are you okay?" Megan whispered, noticing the exchange. I considered the question carefully, searching for any lingering pain or regret. Finding none, I smiled genuinely. "I'm better than okay," I replied, and meant it. Standing there in my carefully chosen dress, surrounded by colleagues who respected me for my work rather than my marital status, I recognized the woman I'd become. Not a victim of betrayal, not an extension of someone else's identity, but entirely my own person. Stronger for having survived the collapse of the perfect illusion I'd lived within. The marriage had ended, but I had not. That, perhaps, was the most valuable lesson from the ruins. Life continues, rebuilds, and sometimes emerges more authentic than before the destruction. The perfect illusion had shattered, revealing something far more valuable in its place. Reality, strength, freedom, and finally peace. If Bella's journey from heartbreak to healing touched your heart, please subscribe. These stories of women reclaiming their power deserve to be shared. One subscription means one more person remembering they're worth fighting for, even if that means fighting alone first. Thank you for being here.